So I'm going to show you now how to produce a graph within Excel. Now, the first thing to kind of get correct before you start to do a graph is to make sure your data is in a particular format. Now, that format is, largely speaking, for most situations, some labels along the top. So in this case, I've got quarter 1, 2, 3, 4, with some descriptions or labels down the left. And then can you see the figures that you want to base the graph on? That should really be in the middle. Now, the reason why we need to label this up is when we produce a graph, we're going to highlight over the data like so, and it's going to use the top section here to kind of label the x-axis, and that's what it'll be doing by default. And then these figures or sort of labels down here, that's going to be like the key. Then the numbers in the middle, that's how the bars or the lines are going to be plotted. So once I've highlighted over like so, what I do is I go to Insert at the top. Then there's a section here called Charts. Now I'm going to, for this particular example, stick with these two types of charts just here, because pretty much every version of Excel has these two different types of chart. So I'm going to pop the arrow down here, and what you get is, can you see sort of a series of what looks like different graphs, and if I hover over them, it gives me a little bit of a preview of what it's going to do. Now, how you produce the graph, simple as this: pick the one you like, click, there's your graph. Now, after you've produced it, can you see I can just very quickly and easily click on the edge of the graph, move it. You can resize it, make it smaller or make it bigger. But yeah, it's really nice and easy to produce, provided your data is in the right format. Now I'm going to remove this graph. I click on the edge, I press delete on the keyboard, and that'll remove it. Now I want to talk to you about a few different types of graph just inside that simple bar chart section, and the line also works in the same way. So if I pop this arrow down, you'll see here I have sort of three at the top, and they're very, very different how they look. And can you see as I hover through them, down below the preview is very, very different. Now, to give you a flavour for what they are, this first one is called a clustered graph. Now, a clustered graph, every single person, or in this case quarter or item, whatever it is that is in the key, that gets its own individual bar. So can you see John, Jane, Dave and Sarah colour coding? Everyone gets their own bar, so you can see what each of those people are doing compared to each other. Okay, so this is what I would call a competitive graph. If I move across to the next one, can you see it still gives me it split out by John, Jane, Dave and Sarah, but instead of individual bars, there is one big bar, and the colours, rather than being split as they were previously, in this one here, this is called a stacked, they are, as it suggests in the name, stacked one on top of the other. So this particular type of graph, you get a flavour for what, in this case, the team is doing as a whole, rather than what everyone is doing in competition with each other. And then going a little bit further over, this is a very similar layout to what I just showed you previously with the normal stacked, but this is called 100% stacked. And 100% stacked, the bar goes all the way to the top, and the proportions of these bars are, well, that very thing actually, they are proportions of a total. So rather than telling me an exact monetary figure in this case, it's telling me that, Sarah in quarter 1 did roughly 40% of the total sales. So this is competitive. This is kind of a collaborative, together. Again, this is collaborative, but this takes the idea of the actual value away, and it's more of the proportion. And then everything down beneath each one of the ones at the top is the same thing, but it'll either be three-dimensional, or it'll be on its side, or in that case, 3D and on its side. Again, whichever one you want, you just click, there's your graph. Move it to wherever you want, job's a good one. Now, in addition to the bar, the lines work in a very, very similar way. We go to Insert again, I'm going to pick a line. This is a clustered, so everyone gets their own line. This is a stacked, this is 100% stacked. These are the exact same thing, but with like these little notches on to kind of show a separation. And then go down here, can you see you have this kind of, it's almost like an ant farm, I suppose. It's called an area graph. So that everyone gets their own individual. That is stacked. that is 100% stacked. And again, whichever one you want, click, there's your graph. One last thing to mention about graphs is, if I change one of the figures, you'll notice the graph automatically adjusts to take that change. So it is live based on the data as it is at the point in time you were looking at it. So that is a little bit about adding, in this case, bar charts and also line graphs.